In my last video, I talked about how you can create a campaign and get it to the table as quickly as possible, following just a couple of steps without getting bogged down in world building and history and all of that stuff that players don't really care about. And because of that video, I got this comment. So that's what I'm going to do. We're going to go through the steps that I outlined in the last video, and we're going to create a small campaign area so I can show you exactly how quickly it can be done. And just off the top of my head, I have nothing planned for it. I'm Tristan. This is Heroes and Homebrew. So as you can see, these are the 4 steps. We've got the tone of the campaign or the tone of the world. What kind of genre is it going to be? Is it going to be dark fantasy, low fantasy, high fantasy, that kind of thing? We have our starting location. This is generally going to be a town that the players can use as sort of a home base, somewhere to go back to before they start exploring the wider world. A few adventure sites scattered around the area, and some rumors for those adventure sites that the players can follow up on. Not all the rumors need to be true, so it gives them a little bit to play with. So let's start with the tone. I think to make things simple, we're just going to keep this as a Western fantasy style, like, Middle Earth kind of fantasy style. So we can easily slot it in with most fantasy games that we're going to play, whether it be BX or DCC or what have you. So let's write that down. Okay, so we have our tone. We got a typical Western European fantasy setting. Now within that, we can just say, okay, well, dwarves and elves are a little more rare. Halflings maybe have more of a connection with the humans, however you want to do it. But at least this gives us something to go on. Next, we need our starting location. Now, I've been reading Black Company lately, and I like how they name their towns. They use just like a one word for a lot of them. And sometimes it seems kind of innocuous, like the town of Rose or whatever. So I kind of like that. So we're going to name our town something along those lines. Let's say Granite. Let's name the town Granite. All right, so in this town is going to be relatively small. We'll say the population is 300. It's not a huge city. It's not a tiny hamlet of just a couple of dozen people. It's 300 people. It's a fair-sized town. Well, it's a town. All right. Let's say there's a mayor, there's a blacksmith, general store, blacksmith. I'm going to say there's 2 taverns. There's the Inky Puddle, which is going to be low end. And there's the Glowing Stone, which is going to be, let's say, middle. Yeah, I'll just say middle. So there's no high end, but there's a low end and a middle. So maybe the low end is a bit rougher, maybe more fights break out there, but you can maybe find some fighting men in there. And the Glowing Stone is maybe a little more pricey, but maybe some of the wealthier people in this town hang out there. So the mayor and maybe some administrators and probably 1 or 2 nobles in the town. So we have that. We have the general store. I don't like having magic stores and, magic being available for purchase, so that's not going to be available. But there's going to be stables and the typical town things that you would think of, like a market, etc. We don't need to write it all down. We kind of have it in our head. Like, this is a town. It's, if the players ask if something's there and you haven't thought about it, then you can just roll an oracle dice, a yes, no, and find out. Or you just make it up. Say, yes, okay, there is. It makes sense that there would be a mill, for instance. Something of that sorts. So we have our starting location. Now, let's go to a map, and we're going to start creating a map of this area. It doesn't need to be huge. It just needs to be, let's say, we're going to do it like 10 hexes by 10 hexes or something to that effect. Okay, so this is Worldographer. We've got a 10 hex by 10 hex map here. You can make it any size you want, but the idea is to keep things small and build out as the campaign progresses. So we're just going to place our town, village, town. Yeah, okay, we'll use this. Let's move this out of the way. We're going to put the town kind of in the center. It's not dead center, but it's center-ish, center adjacent. So next we need to create these adventure sites. So I think one obvious thing we need to do is create a dungeon. So we're going to use this, and we're going to put our dungeon. See, if we do a typical 3 hexes per day, we want the dungeon to be within a day's ride. So let's put the dungeon, say, here. Now you notice I haven't put any features in the land. That's something you could do after, however you want to do it. Right now we're just leaving it like this. Maybe after I'll put in some stuff. So we've got a dungeon. One thing I'm going to do, I'm going to label it. All right, let's do 1. So 1, we're going to mark that down on our sheet. So adventure sites, I'm going to go down here. I'm just going to make this easy for myself. 1 dungeon, and just for fun, let's give it a name. Let's call it the Maze of 1,000 Skulls. Doesn't matter. Come up with a fun horror typed name for it. All right, let's go back to our map. So next, we need another adventure site. Maybe not a dungeon this time. Let's go for a lair. Yeah. So we need to have a goblin lair. Well, it doesn't need to be a goblin lair, but these are first level characters. Let's create a lair here. And that's going to be number 2. Put that there. So you can do this like I'm doing it. It's number 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm putting the numbers here just to show the number of adventure sites we're going to start off with. You could just use the number of the hex if you want to. Number 2 is going to be maybe not a goblin lair. Goblin lairs are overused. Let's make it a direwolf lair. There we go. So we have number 2 is the direwolf lair. Let's go back to our map. So number 3, let's do a weird feature. Something interesting. Oh, this looks kind of cool. A landmark. All right, let's do this landmark. There we go, number 3. Number 3 is going to be, so it's a landmark. Just knowing what the landmark is should kind of entice players to go see it, right? So let's call this the glowing monolith. So when we do our rumors, maybe there's something going on with the glowing monolith. Maybe there's people worshiping there. Maybe there's a cult. Maybe it's opening up a portal. Whatever, however you want to decide you want to do it. When we do our rumors, that's what we'll do. So let's just, for now, we're going to call it the glowing monolith. And then number 4, let's go with ruins. There we go. Ruins. Not runes, ruins. This is going to be a little further away. This is going to be a couple of days travel. Maybe it's going to be a little more high level for the players. Maybe like when they reach level 3 after exploring the dungeon for a couple of layer levels and then leveling up a bit. Maybe they're going to hear about these rumors about the ruins and want to go explore there. So let's add our 4 here. There we go. So we have our town, which you know what? Let's put a label for the town so we can know what it is. There we go. Granite. There's our town. And just for fun, let's throw in some terrain. Just so it's not all green. So I've put in some terrain. We have our locations, 4 locations. We have a couple of forests, a swamp, some mountains, some hills. Very simple. You could add in a river if you want. I would. Maybe the river is flowing away from the mountains through granite or near granite, so they have access to water. And there might be a water mill there in granite that's, helping with the production of wheat or what have you. You could add farmlands, etc. But for now, we're keeping it very simple. The forests, the mountains, you can give those all names. Like the forest could be the haunted forest. Maybe there's ghosts in there or something like that, or undead. All that stuff you can start building out when you've got this little map to say, okay, well, we got a swamp and this and that, and it'll give you ideas. Even if you look at the monster lists of what they could encounter in there, give you an idea of what may be in there. That's another thing we could do is we could go through the monster lists and roll on those tables for the type of terrain that they're in and see what's at these places. So number 4 was the ruins. So we're going to call these the ruins. Let's keep it very simple. Next, we need some rumors for these. So let's go here. Now you don't need to go overboard here. Just a couple of rumors to get things started. So Maze of a Thousand Skulls. Let's say hunters have disappeared in the area around the dungeon. So maybe this dungeon's an old mine. Maybe hunters hunt there and they've started disappearing. So let's say, is this true or false? Let's say this is true. Howling is heard coming from the dungeon location. This could be true as well. Let's throw in a false one. Let's say glittering jewels are seen, let's say not seen, are reported to be glowing in the tunnels. Let's say that's false. And one more. Say people say that the area around the dungeon is haunted by a headless ghost. That's also false, but maybe it's something that'll entice the players to go see it. So next, we're going to go for Direwolf Lair. Let's go here. So the Direwolf Lair, goblins have been wrangling direwolves for mounts. This is true. Direwolves are dragging children. No, not children. Let's say direwolves are dragging I got it. Direwolves are transforming into humans and coming to town. Now, this is actually good, even if this is false. This is kind of good because this is going to make people in the town wary of newcomers. It's going to make them wonder. It might start causing people to accuse others of being a werewolf, etc. So you can create kind of like that role-playing aspect of it, of a town kind of in fear of sort of an inner threat. Let's say the lair is full of ancient hidden treasure. You know what? Let's call this one true. Just let's give the players a goal. So maybe if they go there and they fight off these direwolves, maybe they can find a bunch of loot. Maybe this will help them level up. And then number 4, the lair disappears during the day. This is going to be false. So there you go. We got rumors for 2 of them. All right, next, glowing monolith. Glowing monolith, let's say a cult is said to worship here and sacrifice halflings. Why not? That's low-hanging fruit. What do you think? True or false? Let's call this false. Remember, just because it's false doesn't mean it's completely false. It could just be partially false. Maybe a cult is worshiping there, but they're not sacrificing halflings. Maybe there is something sacrificing halflings, but it's not a cult. So you can play with it as you wish. You could have it be completely false, or you could have it be partially false and put a twist on it. The monolith opens a portal to the ethereal realm. Actually, ethereal realm, and allows undead to rise. Let's call that true. Let's throw some undead in there. All right. Also, again, when it's true, It doesn't have to be completely true. It could be partially true. You can play around with these things. The monolith is covered in arcane runes. Not the onolith, the monolith. Let's call this one false. Maybe it's covered in runes, but they aren't magical. Let's say a basilisk guards the monolith. Actually, basilisk is too. I think it's too much of a deadly threat for beginners. Let's say. Oh, you know what? Let's link it to the direwolf lair. People think that direwolves are turning into werewolves. Maybe it's werewolves are protecting the monolith. Werewolves protect the monolith. Actually, you know what? Let's change that even further and make it just lycanthropes. Doesn't have to be werewolves. It could be werebears, wererats. All right, next we have the runes. So let's say the ruins are crawling with lizard folk. I'm going to call that one true. Oh, you know what we didn't do with lycanthropes? We're going to say this one's true as well. All right, the ruins are crawling with lizard folk. The ruins have an entrance to an underground cavern system. If you want to, you can have this be a second dungeon system. It doesn't have to be a big dungeon. It could be literally just a few rooms, but mostly corridors that the lizard folk maybe have their lair in there. Maybe they're hatching other lizard people. The ruins were once the home of a magic user experimenting with, let's say, experimenting with what? Let's say he was experimenting with raising the dead. Why not? But this is going to be false. Again, it could be partially false. It's however you want to do it. And then for the ruins have the throne of an ancient. Oops. Actually, yes. So the ruins have a throne. Where the skeleton of an ancient king still sits. Again, I'm typing fast and I can't spell. All right, so there we go. We have our rumors. So we're in a typical Western European fantasy setting. We have the starting location of the town of Granite, which is a population of 300. It's got a mayor. We're going to have to come up with the NPC for the mayor, probably, maybe not right away. Blacksmith, general, these are all things that, general store, sorry, these are all things that you can just do after. You just quickly whip up your NPC. Doesn't have to be fleshed out. They're not going to interact with them too much. You have two taverns, the Inky Puddle, which is low end, the Glowing Stone, which is kind of more middle of the road, stables, etc., whatever you think might be available in this town. And then you have your 4 adventure sites. You got a dungeon, which is called the Maze of a Thousand Skulls. You have a direwolf lair, glowing monolith, and ruins. We've got very different sort of things. We've got like a proper dungeon, a lair, which is usually only 3 or 4 rooms with direwolves. Maybe there's some treasure in there. The glowing monolith, which could lead to other adventures if there's a cult there or whatever you decide, then that could lead on to other adventures, especially if this cult has activities there that's foiled by the players. Then that cult could be coming back later on to try and do something with them. And then we have the ruins, which could be anything. Could be the ruins of a keep, could be the ruins of a town, could be whatever you want. These are just some things that I came up with very quickly. But right there, we have enough that we can go and start a game right away. You just give your pitch to the players. Hey, we're going to run this game. It's a typical Western fantasy. Make up your players, and then the first session, you just feed them some of these rumors. You don't have to feed all of them. If you want them to go to, if you say, hey, I've got the dungeon fleshed out, let's feed them the rumors for the dungeon, then there you go. You just toss a couple of rumors at them. Maybe toss a rumor for one of the two of the other sites. If you think those sites are too dangerous, you can telegraph that by saying, hey, like, the townsfolk think this is super dangerous, and maybe you shouldn't take it on. But again, it's up to the players. If they decide to take on something dangerous, they decide to take on something dangerous. That's it. So let's take one more look at our map. There you go. There's our map. We have these very simple areas, and then we can expand on this. We don't need a whole lot right now. We've put the locations in various areas that'll take them different amounts of time to get to. So we have the town of Granite here, maybe a day to get to the dungeon, and a day, and not even a day, like half a day to get to the dungeon, and then half a day to get back. They could do that in one day. Getting to the monolith might take them a little more time. Certainly take them more than a day to get there and back. Getting to the ruins is going to take a couple of days probably. And then getting to the lair is also going to be a couple of days. So in the meantime, when they're traveling through these areas, they're going to run into different things. We can take these runes and say roll up on the swamp table what might be there. Maybe there's undead there. Maybe there's a black dragon in that swamp. And that's just going to create more depth to this as you play it. But to get to the table and to get playing, that's it. There you go. We're off and running. We created a starting area in very little time, enough that you could get started right away. And hopefully, once you start building, this is going to trigger other ideas, and you're going to be able to build on it as the players play. Just these areas are going to inform the game, and is going to make things really interesting. And you've gotten a game to the table without worrying too much about the details and getting bogged down in it. Hope this helps. I hope this answers some questions that you might have had from the last video. Until next time, save a seat for me at your table.